With you a fascinating insight. Fascinating insight by the Tosas Yantiv. There's actually machlokas today, based upon the Mishnah in Perek Aleph. Mishnah, I think it's Tezain. We just finished talking about Hillel and Shammai. We kind of move on to Rambam Gamliel Omer Aseh l'charav v'stalik min asafek va'al tarbel aser omadot. And frankly, what Rambam Gamliel says is fascinating and interesting, but I want to focus on something else right now. This is the first time the Mishnah didn't say Kiblu Mehen. In other words, when the Mishnah started out, we had Shimon. First we had Shimon HaTzadik, who was Mishiar Knesset Agadola, and Antigonus Shin Socho was Kibel from Shimon HaTzadik, and after that, Yosef ben Yuezer, Tzreidav, Yosef and Yochanan, Kibel Mehem, and Kibel. Each person received the Torah. You have Mamash the Masorah going back through the rabbinic system. The Mishnah doesn't spell out which of the Nevi'im had it. They don't want you to see the Rambam mentions that in Mishnah Torah. But here you have Rambam Gamliel, and he just says Omer, doesn't mention why. So there's a machlokas 2 days in Tosas Yishanim as to why. And it's a Tosas Yantiv why. V'hu beno shel Hillel. For starters, he's ben beno shel Hillel. In other words, he's the grandson of Hillel Rambam Gamliel. V'lakach lo nichtav lashon kabbalah mikan ulahala. Lafisha talmidei Hillel v'Shammai nisrabsa hamachlokes b'Yisrael. V'chule shetoras kol chacham v'chacham lo yisa mugveles umikubeles v'nimsra k'moetz l'rishonim. There's one day out there that the Tosas Yantiv quotes who says the reason why we don't mention the phrase Kibel is because at this stage in the game there's been a bigger shift. There's been a big transformation. No longer are we giving over Torah, like giving over the entire Torah and passing it forward. It's not like one person had it all and gave it all to the next person. Rather, there's something else going on here. And then himself, Tosas Yantiv himself isn't sure. He says, Ve'eno mochrach, maybe, but maybe not. He's not convinced. Because a little later on in Perek Beis Mishnah Ches, Tanan Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Kibel from Hillel and Shabbos. So it does say he was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was Makabel, so Son was Makabel from them. Exactly what. So therefore, there's two perspectives. One is that the Kabbalah stopped, and number two is that the Kabbalah at least changed. It's not Mochrach, the day himself of Tosas Yantiv, that maybe something's changed with that. I want to focus on this for a second because the type of learning that took place before Hillel and Shammai and afterwards, seemingly something's different. After all, there's a very noticeable observation, which is before Hillel and Shammai, you really have no machloksim. You don't have machloksim in this halacha and that halacha from any other previous people, whether it's Yosef ben Yuezer, Ishchareda, or whether it's Shimon HaTzadik, or any of the earlier Tanaim, Yoshua ben Parachia, Nita Harbelia, no, really zero machloksim. And certainly before that, you don't have a machloksim halacha Chagai versus Zechariah, or who knows what, and therefore, why was there no machlokes until this point in time? And why was machlokes only from here on out? So the truth is the Rambam actually addresses this question. There's more than two answers, but I'll share with you the two answers that the Rambam addresses. I think it was a fascinating Musar Haskell to take from each of these shittas. The Rambam, in his Hagdama to Mishnayos, asks this question, and the Rambam quotes a Deya of Gaon, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's from Shri where he argues that originally things was passed on, Mamish Kiblu, like Mishnah would support this, was passed on word for word, thought by thought, halacha by halacha, din by din, and people remembered everything. And the Gemara, and then from Hillel and Shammai, apparently something stopped people didn't remember as well. The Gemara Masechah Sanhedrin reinforces this idea, saying that Talmidim were not mishamish their Rebbeim properly enough. They didn't, were not misharis them properly enough. They did not do their job. They were not diligent. It's like the game of telephone. You pass something on long enough, and at some point in time, later on in the system, later on in the telephone, later on in the game, something breaks and no longer is it as clear as it was in the beginning. And seemingly that's what happens according to this day. The Rambam says if this is correct, he's undermining everything. Do you think we forgot mamish everything? Look at how much machlokas there is in Torah. It's like almost all machlokas. You can't go a daf gemara without machlokas all over the place. Every sugya's got machlokas. You think we forgot everything? It just undermines the whole Masorah, says the Rambam. Ella, there's a different shot. Rather, the Rambam then delineates 5 category sections of Torah. The first two and the last two I'm going to mention briefly and really focusing on the third one, the middle one. One is something called Halach LaMoshe Misinai. Tefillin are black. Tefillin have to be square. There's certain dinim that Hashem taught Moshe at Har Sinai. Maybe Tzraros pays Chatzi Nezek, at least according to the Chachamim. Then you have another example category called a Perish LaMoshe Misinai, which means not that it's a law that was taught, but an interpretation of a pasuk. For example, the pasuk says Pirkei Avos. So how do you know a Pirkei Avos is an asterisk? Maybe it's an apple, maybe it's a pear, maybe it's, a grapefruit. So the answer is no, it's a Pirkei Avos, it's dafka, an asterisk, and that's basically a perish Moshe Misinai. God told Moshe what that pasuk means. Groups 4 and 5 are gzeras and takanas. A gzera is like a lo tasei derabanan, and a takana is an asei derabanan. It's a rabbinic institution to do something, to not to do something. And the Rambam has category number 3. Category number 3, the Rambam believes, is really most of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And what happened is that Hashem gave Moshe the Yud Gimel Midas Torah Nidresh Ben of Rabbi Shmuel. And other Tanaim have other numbers, but basically there's a bunch of rules and regulations how to interpret Psukim, and it was Moshe's job to take those rules and develop. And the Rambam argues that people would fight back and forth and argue back and forth until eventually they came to the truth. They uncovered the truth. There was no agreeing to disagree. Eventually they uncovered the right answer. They brought rayas and back and forth logic and psukim. And eventually maybe they went to the Sanhedrin and the Lishkas Haggasis and they or Machriya. At the end of the day, they uncovered the emes. And what Gemara Masech Sanhedrin means and what occurred from after Hillel and Shammai and on is that when the Talmidim were not Mishamis Rabbeim properly, it doesn't mean that they started forgetting things as much as they no longer concluded the conceptual, analytical debate, insisting on uncovering the one truth. That's this machlokas between the Rambam versus the Deya he quotes in Gaonim as to really the history or evolution of machlokas. I should point out there's a third day. I'm not going to focus on it briefly, but the Ritva Mesachtir from Daf Yud Gimel says, quotes Chachmei Tzarfat, that believes that really machlokas was almost designed originally. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Moshe Rabbeinu 3 or 4 svaras already at Har Sinai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a brisk already at Har Sinai. He says, here's the reason, here's 49 reasons to be metameh and 49 metaher, etc., etc. Okay, leaving that aside for a second, 2 days in the Rambam that we're focusing on today, seeing there's a fascinating machlokas between them with 2 really important upshots, 2 really important conclusions to draw. The more important conclusion to draw seemingly is how much of Torah Sheba'al Peh was given at Har Sinai. Was every single din given or no, just the rules and regulations? It's our job to uncover them. It was every single detail by detail given, and now it's our job to pass it on and memorize them, send generation to generation. That seems to be the first day. And we started forgetting them. We no longer could remember what was given to us at Har Sinai, alternatively. The Rambam seems to believe, no, not all the details were given. Rather, it's our job to go through them and analyze and ask questions and give answers and figure it out and uncover the truth, with the rules and regulations that HaKadosh Baruch Hu navigated us with. If that's correct, according to the Rambam, so not everything was given at Har Sinai in terms of all the information. It was like a seed, which is supposed to, you water it, you develop it, and it grows. A lot more can be fleshed out, and that's exactly what Torah is all about. One of the major rise to the Rambam, if you think about it, is really Shas. All the Gemaras in Shas really just reinforce this theory. Isn't Shas just, or isn't it complete with, full with, overflowing with rayas and kashas and terutzim, and here's a kasha that Baya asked, and here's the response to it, and all the analysis back and forth. Isn't that exactly what Torah is all about? Isn't that recording of the conversations that the Rambam is referring to? How could you argue with that? So the Ramchal, in the back of the Derech Hashem, I know the one that Feldheim published, they have a bunch of essays. I forgot what the essays were called. But in there, the Ramchal seems to take the other approach. Like the first day, the Rambam quotes that everything was given at Har Sinai, and he says, no, these are just pneumatic devices, tricks to help us remember all of Torah. Fascinating machlokas as to how much of Torah Sheba'al Peh was given at Har Sinai. Machlokas number 2, and there's one I want to kind of talk about in terms of the Musar Haskel, is that there's a second machlokas, which is, what's the goal of learning Torah? Seemingly, according to the Rambam, the goal of learning Torah is to think and analyze and ask questions and give answers, while according to the Gaonim, the first day he quotes, it's much more about knowledge. Is it knowledge-based or thought-based? Is it about attaining information, collecting yediyah, or is it about analysis and chachma and challenges and questions and thought? Those are the 2 different dimensions of Torah that exist. Maybe the machlokas is, how is Torah designed? Was it designed to be given to us for us to memorize, or designed for us to take less information and develop it and think and analyze and draw our own conclusions? And l'char, that machlokas really stems through throughout, you find different Tanoim with different nicknames. Some were named like Sinai because they knew a lot, and some were Oker Harim, and the different kohos of thought, some analysis and some knowledge, play out through all of the Chachmei HaMasorah, and they really stem back to perhaps even all the way to